3 months before the wedding, my fiancé lost his mind, jilted me, and ran off to chase his first love. On the very day of the ceremony, he marched back in with that woman, determined to humiliate me. He actually managed to play it cool. Pity his ending was so miserable. Serena, you've got guts, sneaking off and staging a wedding without telling me. The instant I heard that voice, I knew he was back. I turned. Sure enough, it was Julian, Oren glued to his side. The shock sent a ripple of gasps through the ballroom. Whispers rose like steam. Who's the idiot crashing a Vance-Voss wedding? Does he want to get erased from Riverdale? That's the groom, Julian himself. Look at what he's wearing, he's spitting on the Vance name. Never thought I'd see a guy blow up his own wedding. Julian's temples throbbed, veins bulging beneath the skin. A few guests started forward, but one glare from him froze them mid-step. He swept his eyes over me in my couture gown and sneered. Serena, I didn't think you'd stoop this low just to marry me. Did you really believe a surprise wedding would force me to say yes? My fingers clamped around the bridal bouquet, nails sinking deep into the stems. I hadn't imagined Julian could be this heartless. Today was supposed to be our wedding day. When I was 18, Dad took Mom and me on a weekend drive. On a winding mountain road, a landslide slammed a boulder into our car. Mom and Dad in the front died on impact. I in the back seat was shredded by flying glass and metal. Pinned in the wreckage, I was bleeding out, consciousness fading, when strong arms lifted me free. Before the dark swallowed me, I saw his face, devastatingly handsome. When I woke in the hospital, he had vanished. I searched everywhere, but nobody knew him. It was as if he'd never existed. To keep me from drowning in grief, Grandfather Vance packed me off to Europe for school. 5 years later, at the homecoming gala he threw for me, I met him again. He was Julian, heir to Voss Industries. He didn't remember me. From then on, I begged Grandfather to partner with Voss, engineering every excuse to bump into him. I studied his tastes, his schedule, anything for one more minute of conversation. Riverdale's old money circles talk. Soon everyone knew I was his simp. I didn't care. On his birthday, I cooked a bowl of birthday noodles and carried it to his office. While I waited outside, I overheard staff gossip. Julian's crazy about that scholarship girl his family sponsors. The parents won't let them go public. My heart cracked, but love can't be chained, so I resolved to step aside. Seeing me mope, Grandfather announced to every boardroom and ballroom, Serena is the last of our line, marry her, rule Vance Holdings. I knew he only wanted someone to protect me. Suitors flooded our gates. I felt nothing for any of them, yet I agreed to meet the candidate Grandfather chose. The man who walked in was Julian. Shock and embarrassment sent me bolting for the door, but he caught my wrist. Smiling, gentle, he said, Miss Vance, running away? Can't you give me a chance? I tugged free, cheeks burning. Mr. Voss, if you already love someone, don't toy with me. Julian's smile stayed perfect. You're the one I love. I never joke about that. I floated home that night, the whole world glittering like a dream. We became a couple overnight. He was attentive, tender, perfect. At his urging, Vance Holdings poured hundreds of millions into Voss Industries. He said we'd be family soon, so why not let him manage both empires now? I hate boardrooms, so I signed, convinced love was enough. Then, 3 months ago, Grandfather's heart began to fail. His last wish, see me married and safe. The two families set the date at once. Clutching the stock transfer contracts, I hid in his walk-in closet to surprise him. Instead, I swallowed the truth whole. Oren, hearing of our engagement, vanished. Julian, now holding most of Vance, decided to follow his heart and chase his first love. He even commissioned an android double to mock me, to mock the Vance name. I crushed the contracts in my fist, tears smearing the ink until Serena dissolved into a black bloom. Throwing herself a wedding? Desperate much. Had I known the heiress was this eager, I'd have taken a shot. Ha ha ha. Rich and throwing herself at a guy, rare combo. Heh. The ballroom seethed with ugly laughter. Before I could speak, Jessica stepped in front of me, one hand on her hip, the other jabbing at Julian's nose. You bastard, weren't you the one on your knees begging Serena to marry you? Your proposal of the century is still trending, genius. You played the gentleman so well I actually believed you, and now you drag your little side piece to the altar? Guests began to remember. Right, Julian's flash mob proposal, the one with the $1 million orchestra and the bespoke fireworks. And Serena's tiara, he paid $10 million for it at that charity auction. I was there, nobody could fake the way he looked at her. So the groom's publicly dumping the bride for the other woman, rich folks sure know how to entertain. Sensing the tide turning, Julian darkened. Oren spoke first, voice honeyed. The one without love is the other woman. Besides, Julian's been traveling with me for 3 months, how could he propose to you? Julian, tell them. She clung to his arm, shaking it like a child. Julian stroked her hair, eyes doting, then faced the crowd. That's right. These past 3 months I've been abroad with Oren. We landed this morning. A stunned hush fell. If Julian had been overseas, who had staged the lavish courtship the city had watched with fascination? Oren twisted the knife, pretending sudden insight. Don't tell me you hired some doppelganger to pressure Julian into marrying you, Miss Vance. Julian and I are in love. Please, let him go. Why stoop to something this despicable, hiring a look-alike doppelganger to play along just to drive a wedge between Julian and me? Oren had her arm tucked through Julian's, chin lifted high, contempt dripping from her eyes. Julian said nothing, but the way he leaned into Oren, head cocked in triumph, made him look like a rooster fresh from the winner's circle. Seeing it, the guests naturally gave Oren's story more weight. Julian's shamelessness reached a new low in my book. They were the ones trampling my heart, trampling the good name of both the Vance and Voss families, yet they dared fling the blame back at me. Jessica was wheezing with rage, she couldn't take another second. You twisted pair of cheats, still sprouting garbage? Watch me rip your mouth apart. Before I could move, Jessica barreled forward. She'd barely reached Oren when Julian caught her mid-lunge, pinning her arms while Oren bounced on her heels, ready to jump in. Stop. Lay one finger on her and the Vance family will make every one of you pay. At my warning, Oren cuddled closer to Julian, blinking doe eyes. She's terrifying. I'm scared, Julian smirked. You hire a stand-in and think the Vance name will shield you? I glanced toward the ballroom doors, still empty, and worry twisted inside me. Why isn't he here yet? I always heard Miss Vance carried a torch for Julian, but who knew she'd lose her mind over it? Heiress to the richest fortune in the country and she settles for being the other woman, disgusting. Poor Julian, stalked by a psycho. That double of hers flaunted their love 4 months, imagine the kinky games behind closed doors. No wonder Julian can't stand her. The audience swallowed Julian's version whole, the insults kept piling up. For grandfather's sake, for Vance Holdings, I forced myself to speak. We both know the real story. Whatever happens, this wedding is taking place today. The real story? You used your family clout to pressure me into marriage. When that failed, you sank even lower, found a stand-in, planned to sneak into the Voss family while I was away, and blackmail me into recognizing it. The only woman I'll ever marry is Oren. Stop deluding yourself. His shameless lies tipped me past anger into laughter. Who says I'm marrying you today? Silence exploded across the room, you could have heard a pin drop. Julian froze, face draining to chalk. Oren recovered first, voice shrilling through the grand hall. Everyone knows this is the Vance-Voss wedding. Miss Vance, you're marrying into the Voss family, who else? My voice stayed flat as still water. Exactly. Oren giggled. Come on, quit bluffing. Julian is the sole heir. Who in the Voss family could you possibly marry? His grandfather. Unbelievable, Julian barked, neck flushing crimson. My parents are devoted to each other, there's no room for an outsider. Are you saying you'll marry my grandpa? To think you'd stoop so low for revenge. Grandfather has always treated you better than I ever did, and you repay him by smearing his name in his old age. You're vile. The guests gaped, stunned speechless. Julian's frenzy looked ridiculous, I almost pitied him. Out of lingering affection I'd left him plenty of dignity, never planning to air his sordid stunts. Yet he'd never spared a shred of true feeling for me, ice cold to the end. Words were useless now, explanations would fall on deaf ears. I turned to fetch my phone and contact the one person who mattered. I'd taken only a few steps when a brutal grip yanked me backward. I crashed to the floor, skull cracking against marble. Something warm trickled from the back of my head. Pain eclipsed everything, I lay helpless. All I saw was Julian's twisted face. A shameless, poisonous woman like you will never set foot in the Voss family. Consider this a small lesson. He tore the diamond necklace from my throat. This belongs to my mother, you conned her out of it. I'm simply reclaiming what's ours. With the necklace in his fist, he raked his gaze over me and smiled cruelly. Since you went to all this trouble planning the wedding, let me put it to better use. Every jewel here was paid for by the Voss family, therefore it's mine. He ripped away the priceless tiara, then seized the skirt of my wedding gown. I tried to push him off, but my limbs wouldn't obey. The man I once loved was stripping me in front of a crowd. Tears of humiliation burned down my cheeks. When we were together, I'd pictured 100 times what it would feel like to wear this gown and walk toward him. Never had I imagined the day I finally put it on he'd treat me like this. Jessica sobbed in desperation, Oren blocking her path. I wanted to scream a warning, but no sound came. All I could do was watch Julian loot my gown, my necklace, my tiara, then present them to Oren like trophies. Oren, I'm sorry today isn't perfect. I'll throw you an even grander wedding, promise. Oren beamed, fastening the necklace and crown without delay. Jessica finally broke free, pulled me into her arms, and held me tight. My gown was gone. I stood in nothing but lingerie, nearly naked beneath hungry eyes. Male guests licked their lips. I heard someone gulp. Jessica tried to shield me, but it was futile. Her eyes bloodshot, she shrieked, "Julian, you bastard, rot in hell." Oren whined sweetly, "Julian, look at them, so obnoxious. Throw them out." Julian tapped her nose in mock annoyance. "Anything for you. I'll get rid of them right now." He pivoted, voice glacial. "Serena, leave this instant." "I'll let it go, consider it mercy." "Stay gone if you know what's good for you." He seized my arm in Jessica's. She thrashed, swinging wildly to keep him away from me. Strength favored him. A brutal kick sent Jessica sprawling, sobbing but helpless. Terrified, I watched him close in, fist knotted in my hair, dragging me across the stage toward the exit. Scalp burning, body numb, humiliation piled on pain until I no longer wanted to survive. Then a dark figure sprinted toward me. A split second later Julian flew backward from a crushing kick. Gentle arms lifted me, a black suit jacket enveloped me like armor. I clung to his sleeve like it was my last breath. "You're here." He brushed the hair from my face, took in my colorless cheeks, voice breaking with remorse. "I'm here. Forgive me for being late, let's get you out." Julian scrambled up from the floor, pale as paper, clutching his stomach. "Who the hell are you? Do you even know who I am?" he roared, half crazed with rage. Adrian lifted his head slowly, eyes glacial. "You're the one who hurt her?" He'd moved so fast earlier, then kept his head bent while he held me. Only now did the crowd finally see his face. It was Julian's mirror image. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. "So that's the double Miss Vance dug up, spitting image. Maybe the guy making trouble is the fake." "Best show I've seen all year, pass the popcorn." Julian hadn't expected him either. "Impossible. I had that unit scrapped." The word slipped out before he caught himself. A heartbeat later his sneer snapped back into place, arrogance untouched. "Perfect. The slut rented a stand-in. Saves me the trip, I'll bury both adulterers at once. You laid a hand on my wife and trashed my wedding. You'll pay for it today." Adrian's voice was flat, dead calm, yet I caught the flicker of murder in his eyes. He glanced at Jessica, she nodded, easing me from his arms. "Take care of her." I knew he meant to teach Julian a lesson, but Julian had boxed since prep school. I opened my mouth to stop him. Adrian stroked my hair, gave me that soft, crooked smile. "Be good. I'll be right back." Then he rolled his cuffs, Quinn, every inch of him promising blood. Julian's bravado cracked, just a hair, but with Oren watching and the city's elite scribbling mental headlines, he couldn't back down. "Anyone who drops this imposter is my brother for life, and Voss Industries will bankroll him." The offer lit greedy sparks. One handshake with the Voss dynasty and your future was minted. Yet one look at Adrian's thundercloud face kept every last wolf rooted. Nobody wanted to step into a fight when they couldn't tell the real heir from the ghost. Julian's temper boiled over. Pride and a black belt in karate sent his fist flying at Adrian's jaw. Adrian never flinched. As Julian closed, he lashed out once, one piston punch that slammed Julian to the marble. Full force. Julian's lip split, crimson dribbling. He didn't get up. Adrian wasn't finished. He hauled Julian up by the collar, fist cocked for round two, until a baritone cracked across the room. "Enough. Haven't we supplied enough gossip for one day?" Charles, Julian's grandfather, patriarch of Voss Industries, the man whose shadow could tilt Riverdale's stock market, strode in. He'd lived overseas for years, even I had only met him a handful of times. Before I could parse what was happening, Charles took in my torn gown and bloody knuckles. "Serena, who dared lay hands on you?" Oren leapt in before I could speak. Grandfather Vance, while Julian was away, Miss Vance hired this look-alike to murder Julian and force her way into the family. Julian only gave her a small lesson. Julian, blind to the storm gathering on Charles's face, rushed to pile on. Grandfather, Serena wants the Voss empire. She cloned a double, staged this sham wedding, and sicked him on me. Please, defend your blood. I'll defend my blood, Charles answered, voice like gravel. I started to explain. Charles's palm met Julian's cheek with a crack that silenced the quartet. Julian cupped his swelling face, stunned. Grandfather, I'm your grandson. Charles spared him a glance of utter contempt. Disgraceful fool. Then, gentle as a summer judge, he turned to Adrian and me. Serena, Adrian, the boy crossed the line. I'll discipline him properly. Let it end here, grant an old man face. The request sounded courteous, but it detonated like a gavel. The crowd inhaled in unison. Adrian, leader of the Azure Syndicate, the name that ruled Riverdale's nights, had just been called by his real name. Julian's complexion turned ashen. No. Absolutely not. He's a knockoff Serena bought on the black market. Adrian stepped in front of me, authority radiating. Julian slandered my wife and still crows innocence. I'm not walking away, Charles exhaled. Then at least spare his life. The Voss line has already bled enough. Adrian's knuckles whitened. With every measured stride, Julian's bravado dissolved into raw fear. Just as Adrian raised his fist, Richard and Evelyn Voss burst through the doors, late but providential. Julian sagged with relief. Charles might weigh profit over heirs, but his parents had always doted on him. They would take his side. Dad, Mom, it's all Serena and that fraud's doing. They hijacked my wedding, they're after Voss Holdings, crush them. Evelyn cut him off, voice trembling yet firm. Hush. Apologize to your brother and sister-in-law right now. Julian blinked, lost. Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a brother. Evelyn's eyes brimmed. Adrian is your brother. Today is his wedding to Serena. The floor seemed to tilt under Julian's feet. He spun toward Richard and Charles, demanding an answer. Charles gave a single, slow nod. Richard cleared his throat and, with Evelyn crying silently beside him, spilled the secret they'd buried for 3 decades. Evelyn had carried twins. 2 boys, Julian and Adrian. Weeks after birth, an enemy of the family abducted both infants. The kidnapper wanted no ransom, only to make the parents choose which child would live. They picked Julian, the stronger baby, believing they'd never hold the other again. To dull the pain, they erased every trace, raising Julian as an only child. Adrian was the son they thought had died. I already knew part of the story. I'd overheard Julian vow to abandon me for Oren and had decided then to call off our engagement. I went to the Voss mansion myself and told Richard and Evelyn everything from beginning to end. They exploded in fury and agreed to call off the engagement. But when we saw the android double Julian had custom ordered, we were all stunned. How could such a lifelike robot exist in this world? I couldn't help reaching out and pinching his cheek. The skin was smooth and glossy, almost too perfect to believe. After I'd finished mauling him, the android finally spoke. Miss Vance, have you touched enough? Am I really a robot? My face flushed scarlet and I sheepishly dropped my hand. Richard and Evelyn immediately guessed that Adrian might be the son they'd lost years ago. The paternity test came back exactly as they'd suspected. I'd planned to step away for good and never cross paths with the Voss family again, but Adrian launched a fierce campaign to win me. Grandfather Vance had been critically ill for a long time and couldn't handle any shocks. I was terrified that if he learned what Julian had done to me, his condition would worsen. So I begged Adrian to keep playing Julian for a little longer. Just long enough for grandfather to see me happy and worry-free. Adrian was more than willing to help. Grandfather's greatest wish was to watch me walk down the aisle, and after spending time together I found myself slowly moved by Adrian. At the same time I realized I might have mistaken one brother for the other all along. In the end the Vance-Voss alliance stayed in place, only now the groom was Adrian, and the family would publicly acknowledge him on our wedding day. Julian never imagined the truth would spiral beyond his control. He sat on the floor, shaking his head, and screamed hoarse, "He can't be my brother, he's the android double I ordered. This young Master Voss has lost his mind, talking such nonsense. A robot that flawless? Impossible. First he claimed Miss Vance hired a doppelganger, now it's a robot. I say he's gone insane. Reap what you sow. Thought he'd swallow Vance Holdings whole, but now he'll be lucky to keep his own seat at Boss Industries. The crowd buzzed with mockery and scorn. Julian in his heyday had trampled plenty of people. Unable to stand their doubt, he fumbled out his phone. I have proof. The call connected after a few rings. Julian hit speaker so everyone could hear. 3 days ago I told you to scrap the Android double I ordered. Why is he still here? Young Master Voss, what are you talking about? What robot? Julian tried to speak, but the line went dead. That clinched it. Julian had lost his mind. Whether he couldn't stomach the truth or the ridicule, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Evelyn wept in heartbreak. Both men were her sons, but Julian was the one she'd raised from infancy. The bond ran deep. Adrian, Julian's already like this. Let it go, she pleaded. Adrian's voice stayed icy. Let it go? Who answers for Serena's suffering? Evelyn turned to me, apology in her eyes yet a warning in her tone. Serena, Julian wronged you, but what's done is done. I've always loved you like my own daughter. Surely you don't want Adrian to come home only to turn against his brother for your sake. Like a daughter sounded lovely, yet she overlooked every wound on my body to shield her disappointing child. I was angry, but I couldn't bear for Adrian's homecoming to be poisoned by conflict with his family. He'd been alone for years, though he never said it, he clearly yearned to belong. When Adrian started to argue, I cut him off. Adrian, I hurt. He stopped battling them at once, lifted me into his arms, guilt flooding his eyes. I'm sorry. I'll get you to the hospital. After all that turmoil I was exhausted. Cradled in Adrian's warmth, breathing his familiar scent, I knew I'd found the right man this time, and then everything went black. When I woke, a white ceiling filled my vision and antiseptic stung my nose. Adrian was slumped asleep beside the bed, keeping watch. Before I could stir, his eyes fluttered open. Seeing me awake, he bolted upright and squeezed my hand. Serena, are you feeling better? Then remorse shadowed his face. I'm sorry I arrived too late to protect you. I studied his anguish and squeezed back. It's not your fault. At that he hugged me fiercely. Serena, I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. I've reclaimed every asset Julian stole from Vance Holdings, and I've had grandfather suspend him from Boss Industries and freeze every account. Anyone who bullied you will pay. His tone was gentle, but I felt the steel beneath. During my hospital stay Adrian tended to me so devotedly that I recovered quickly. Thanks to a top specialist Adrian had rushed in on our wedding day, Grandfather Vance began to heal as well. I'd never blamed Adrian for appearing late, but learning what he'd done overwhelmed me with gratitude. Once Grandfather recovered, we told him everything. Furious at Julian's crimes, he turned his anger on Adrian too. Adrian swore again and again that Serena was his only love for life. He'd not only won back every penny Julian had conned from me but also transferred every dollar he owned into my name. Bit by bit life turned beautiful. The two people who loved me most were both beside me, and happiness felt complete. If I hadn't bumped into Julian again, I might have blissfully forgotten the past. The man I faced now bore no trace of his former arrogance, he looked haggard and defeated. I tried to walk away, but he blocked my path. Serena, are you happy? I'm not. These days I've done nothing but think and regret. It's all my fault. I was selfish. I thought you'd wait forever. The day you married Adrian I realized the one I love has always been you. I can't lose you, let's start over, please? I rolled my eyes. Really? Then what about Oren, wasn't she the love of your life? At her name Julian exploded. Don't mention that bitch. The moment I stumbled, she latched onto someone else. In his frenzy he grabbed my arms and shook me until pain bleached my face. Still raving, he leaned in to kiss me. I felt trapped. The next second Julian went flying. You're dead. Before he could even gasp, another kick slammed into him, he hit the ground helpless. Adrian strode over, kicked him twice more, then seized Julian's right arm and wrenched until the socket popped with a sickening crack. Julian screamed and passed out. After dealing with him, Adrian rushed me home, pulled out the first aid kit, and gently applied ointment to the bruises Julian had left on my arm. He didn't say a word, yet his touch was soft. Reading his displeasure, I tried every trick to coax a smile from him. Suddenly he looked up, deadly serious. Do you only love me because I look like him? I burst out laughing. Apparently he'd overheard Julian's delirious babble. My laughter made Adrian lower his head, hurt flickering across his face. I lifted his chin and stared into his eyes. I love you, only you. Julian is the doppelganger. I fell for you the moment you pulled me from that car crash. I pretended to pout. If you hadn't vanished for years, I'd never have mistaken Julian for you or been fooled so badly, Adrian rushed to explain. The Azure Dragons were in open revolt, staying would have put you in danger. I made sure you were safe, then left alone. By the time I'd settled the gang, he was already beside you. Luckily that idiot Julian was blind, so fate gave us another chance. Adrian wrapped me in his arms and whispered against my ear, Serena, I'll protect you for the rest of my life. A few days later a traitor surfaced inside the Azure Dragons, and Adrian had to handle it personally. I wanted to go, but the syndicate is packed with men who live by the blade. Adrian told me to wait in peace. Once this ended, he would step down as leader and devote every remaining breath to me. I hugged him tight. Come back soon. After he left, I divided my days between the office and Grandfather Vance's bedside at St. Ignatius. Julian's betrayal taught me that leaning on others is never enough. Adrian could manage my company with ease, but I refused to be a vine clinging to someone else's wall again. Another late night, I stepped onto my porch, pain exploded through my skull, and the world went black. When I woke, my wrists and ankles were bound. Before I could guess the culprit, Julian strolled in. He cupped my chin, voice tender yet eyes venomous. Serena, how could you switch hearts so easily? You once worshipped me, now you run to that Adrian. I stared back coldly. I never loved you. You were Adrian's stand-in. I mistook you for him, for that, you don't even measure up to his pinky. Julian's face twisted. Then why not stay mistaken? Because of you I lost everything, but soon it will all be restored. Adrian is dead. Sign your assets to me, and we'll be exactly as before. He produced a ring, the wedding band I'd slipped onto Adrian's finger. I shouted, how did you get that? What did you do to him? He laughed like a man unhinged. When two heroes exist, one must fall. He's a corpse now. Panic flooded me. Impossible. You have no power to kill him. Julian chuckled. Guess who else wanted him gone? A ghost returns, hands boss half its fortune to you. How could the family tolerate such treachery? My heart lurched. Adrian had seized half of the boss holdings for me. Of course Richard and Evelyn would side with Julian, the son they'd raised with endless devotion. Charles, who'd built Voss Industries with his bare hands, would be livid. Yet I never dreamed they could be this ruthless. Julian advanced. I retreated until my back hit the wall, helpless. Serena, the obstacles are gone. We'll be together from now on. He lunged to rip my clothes. My heart turned to ash. I shut my eyes. Suddenly weight lifted from me. Julian lay crumpled, shrieking in agony. Adrian loomed overhead, murderous cold radiating from every pore. I spared you once. Since you won't learn, rot in the state penitentiary and think it over. Within minutes Julian, Richard, and Evelyn were pushed into squad cars. Attempted murder and abduction carry heavy sentences. When the dust settled, Adrian exhaled and held me so tightly the world disappeared. He had handed prosecutors every shred of evidence. The case was ironclad. Julian drew 15 years, Richard 13, Evelyn 10, each a prison sentence that felt like justice. Adrian had already whispered to the warden. Inside, the cell block king brutalized them daily. They begged to see us. We never answered. To atone, Charles signed the entire Voss empire over to Adrian and truly retired. One evening, curled against Adrian on the couch, I tilted my head. Do you regret choosing me over your family? He stroked my hair. You're all I need. Avery, kids at St. Jude's beat me every day. Then a little stepped between us, fists raised, warning them to stop. She cleaned my cuts, wrapped them, and pressed her favorite candy into my palm, promising sugar kills pain. I learned she was Vance's cherished princess. How could gutter trash like me deserve her? Years later Azure's chief adopted me. He was harsh, yet I was happy. One day I'd be worthy of my little. When I finally was, you already had Julian. I told myself silent guardianship was enough. Then I discovered he cheated, so I set the board to reach you. Tears blurred my vision as I listened. The boy from the orphanage was him, the one I'd begged Mom and Dad to adopt, only to find him gone on our return. Though the syndicate raised him, he'd never felt family warmth. I crushed myself to him. Thank heaven we didn't miss each other this time. I brushed his ear with my lips. You're going to be a dad. He froze, then spun me laughing until the room whirled. Serena, thank you, for giving me a home again. Laughter rang through the penthouse, echoing long after nightfall. Thanks for listening. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? If you enjoyed, please like and share with friends. We'd love to read your comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales. See you next time.